Our next speaker is Dr. Iyad Abumogli, who is the Senior Principal Advisor of the United Nations Environment Program. Dr. Iyad, you have the floor.
Thank you, Kehkashan, and thank you for your relentless efforts and your leadership. Since I knew you almost 10 years ago, you keep impressing me with your leadership and passion for action. So thank you for being a true young leader. We need a lot of you similar to your passion. And greetings to all the distinguished speakers, and especially to those who spoke before me and have eloquently highlighted what we are up against and how we should approach the challenges we are facing today. This year certainly is a crucial year for the environment and sustainable development. This is the year in which the international community needs to match political action with science, ambition with action, and action with momentum to deliver solutions to climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. We need accelerated and transformative actions more than ever. As was mentioned, this January, or the past January, was the hottest month of January ever recorded. 1 million species may be pushed to extinction in the next few years, and air pollution kills millions of people every year. The impact of COVID-19 pandemic that we are currently facing and its immediate aftermath are placing additional strains on the environment. Despite the current challenges of COVID-19, climate change, biodiversity loss, and climate crises have all continued to exist and have not disappeared. So we are still facing the same challenges that we faced before. Humanity and human activity has altered virtually every corner of our planet, from land to ocean, and as a consequence has impacted human health. The world cannot afford delays in key environmental related decision-making and investments. Therefore, the international community should consider the environmental dimension as part of the global response to the pandemic. The world is not on track, unfortunately, to achieve the environmental dimension of the 2030 agenda, as well as the internationally agreed environmental goals by 2050. The environmental crises are likely to make the achievement of most social and economic goals similarly unattainable. We cannot emphasize enough that the 2030 agenda is a people-centered agenda, and that a healthy planet is an essential requirement for sustainable development in which economic, social, and environmental objectives are addressed in a balanced manner. The integrated approach, therefore, requires coherent policy framework, good governance, and law enforcement at all levels, from global to local levels. It also requires effective means of implementation, including finance, capacity building, environmentally sound technologies, developing partnerships in line of the Addis Ababa action agenda. So what do we need at this juncture? First, we need ambitious targets in the 2020 negotiations of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and the International Sound Management of Chemicals and Waste. We need to recognize that COVID-19 offers an opportunity for rebuilding the world better through green and sustainable recovery efforts, sound management of hazardous medical and chemical waste, and a clear commitment to building back better. We need to address transboundary issues and facilitate regionally coherent approaches. We must develop enabling economic policies and incentives to accelerate the transition to economies that protect biodiversity and ecosystem services. And also, in addition to adopting low carbon economies, resource efficient and socially inclusive, and promote ecosystem-based approaches to achieve the SDGs. Without the enforcement of environmental rule of law and good governance, our efforts will not be fruitful. And we stress the importance of access to information and availability of data and engagement of all relevant stakeholders. Imagine only 23% of the 93 environmental related SDG indicators are on track to meet the targets if the current trends continue. For 60% of those, there is not enough data to assess progress. And for 9%, there is no progress towards achieving the target. Also, more than 30% of the environment-related SDGs indicators still do not have an agreed methodology. Achieving the 2030 agenda requires building upon disaggregated and localized data generation and incorporating traditional knowledge, science-based solutions, and citizen science. These measures will contribute to the delivery of the Decade of Action, including the 10 points outlined in the political declaration adopted during the SDG Summit in 2019. The accelerated approach to deliver on the Decade of Action must enable and increase coordination and mainstreaming all actors without exception. This is considered one of the critical gaps in implementing the 2030 agenda. Ecosystem-based approaches, for example, can contribute to lifting 1 billion people out of poverty, creating 80 million jobs, and adding an additional $2.3 trillion in productive growth to the global economy. Enabling economic policies and incentives can play a major role in correcting misaligned prices. For example, in climate change, fiscal policies such as carbon pricing and fossil fuel subsidy reform can mobilize revenues for climate finance. We need to keep emphasizing that sustainable production and consumption is key to the attainment of other goals. Yet, it remains the SDG with the least data availability, least funding, and has low priority from member states. So sustainable consumption and production can play a fundamental role by designing products, processes, and services to optimize the use of resources so that when something reaches the end of its useful life, they are reused, repaired, or remanufactured for another use. We need, therefore, to leapfrog to green investments while addressing the stimulus economic packages to counter the impacts of COVID-19. Thank you.